said. We just read the first couple of lines of Ches. What page? Chaf beis. Beis Ches. Just start at the beginning again. Alpi's kol hanal. Based on everything we've said up until now, we can understand something that we asked at the very beginning of the Maimon. And what's that? Yuvan a vergleich. What's vergleich? The neres Chanukah l'sukkos, neres Chanukah l'sukkos, u'lepadei achag. Right? And of course, why is it that we're asking such a question? Where in the world have we ever seen a comparison of Sukkot to Chanukah and Chanukah to Sukkot?
Gemara Shabbos.
Gemara Shabbos, Beis Shammai, right? How we light, 8 through 1, learning from the Parei Chag. And even Beis Hillel would agree with that if it weren't for Ma'ilin B'Kodesh, that we have to go up in matters of Kedusha and not now. Okay, so that was our first question in the mind. Ki inyan sukkos. Now we saw this line, but we didn't explain it. We just saw it and then we stopped. Ki inyan sukkos, the whole inyan of sukkos, the gam inyan parei chag, and the idea of the parei chag, which we'll see, who is galus hamakifin, is the revelation of makifin. What are makifin? Levels of godly reality that are transcendent of the world and not able to be revealed in the world because they are transcendent of the world. Right? 2 different types of godly light, or mamale, which we talked about, that we're going to start learning in Basi Lagani, B'ez Hashem. If we finish this today, we'll start Basi Lagani tomorrow. 2 different levels of godly light, or mamale, or seviv, the light that fills the world, the light that actively energizes everything in the world, and or seviv, the all-encompassing light, the light in which the world exists, but is not revealed in the world, so it doesn't penetrate into physical reality, or even metaphysical reality, any of the worlds. That's called makif. In you, what's a koyach makif? Ratzon. Tanu, we've talked about this. Different powers of the soul that aren't clothed in any particular part of the body. Right? They power all of the body equally. Everything you do is a function of your ratzon. But ratzon is not clothed in your eyes, or in your ears, or in your mouth, or in your brain. Whereas there are powers of the soul that are clothed in your eyes. It's called sight, clothed in your brain. It's called intellect, clothed in your ears. It's called hearing. Different powers of the soul that are powers that are called kerchis penimim, inner powers of the soul. They're clothed in the body and power the body and are specific to a particular limb in the body. There's aspects of the soul, powers of the soul that are makif, all-encompassing. What's that? Ratzon, will. Everything you do is a function of your will. Every conscious activity that you do the source of it is your will, right? Probably, why do you have a will? Probably, not in all cases, but probably because it gives you tainug, it gives you pleasure, right? Another koyach makif of the soul, which is actually higher than ratzon. Generally, tainug produces ratzon. You get pleasure from something, and therefore you want to do it. Why does you get pleasure from it? Harder to understand than why you want to do it. I know why you want to do it. You get pleasure from it. Why do you get pleasure from it? I haven't got a clue. Further from my conscious reality, that pleasure. Just do like the chocolate gives me pleasure. Why? Peas don't. Corn does. I don't get pleasure from eating peas. Fresh pea pods, yes, but not peas. Why? I don't know. But if you gave me a can of corn, I'd eat a can of corn. I don't go to the pantry in our house and take out a can of corn and open it and eat it with a spoon. I don't. Could I? Yeah, I could do that. Would I do the same thing to canned peas? Not a chance. Why? I don't know. One of them gives me pleasure, the other doesn't. Not sure. Okay. Another koyach makif. What's sukkos? Sukkot is all about taking the makifin of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the inspiration of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is all makif, no interchange, very little, if any, interchange happens on those days. Those days are days of tremendous inspiration and tremendous upliftedness, and then the job is to take that inspiration and that upliftedness and invest it in real behavior. The fact that I daven as well as I daven on Yom Kippur has nothing to do with the state of spiritual sensitivity that I've acquired myself by virtue of hard work. It has a lot to do with the fact that it's Yom Kippur. And there's a makif, there's a revelation of godliness that elevates me and inspires me to feel more connected to God. Okay, so I'll daven better, no doubt. Is that davening indicative of the level that I myself have reached? Not at all. Because the next day I don't, Marav already, I'm not davening that way. Forget the next day, right? By Marav after Ne'ilah. Ne'ilah is the most amazing, uplifted experience of all of Yom Kippur. And then you dance around a little, blow the shofar. Quick, gotta eat. Right? Now that doesn't have to be that way, but it often is. Not that that's how you did it, but that's how probably the minyan you were in did it that way. Okay, fine. So was that show very, very clearly that Yom Kippur is a makif? Because if it were panimi, so my marav would be the same as my ne'ilah, because it's me. No, it wasn't me. I mean, it's not that I'm not doing it, but it's a function of a tremendous revelation from above. That's Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. What's Sukkot? Bringing that into panimius. Sukkot is taking all of the energy of Yom Kippur and bringing it into our conscious reality, so that, Zman Simcha Seinu, a time where we experience the simcha of the appreciation of godliness in our midst, right? And also, you can say it, right? Even though no one says it, but it's Zman Mitzvah Seinu. You're doing mitzvahs all day long, shaking a lulav, sitting in a sukkah. Everything you do, you sit in the sukkah. Everything you do is a mitzvah. You're sitting and reading, learning something in the sukkah. You're sitting and eating something in the sukkah. You're just having a shmooze in the sukkah. Right? According to the Gra, we don't paskin this way. No one paskins this way. But according to the Vilna Gaon, so you make a bracha when you walk into the sukkah. It has nothing to do with eating. Right? We make a bracha only when we eat in the sukkah. That's everybody. Right? But the Gra's position is that you make a bracha when you walk into the sukkah, because walking into the sukkah is amazing. Right? So we don't paskin that way, but it's certainly indicative of how amazing Sukkot is. What does it do? It takes the makif, which is the sukkah itself, and brings it into panimius. Yeshiva b'sukkah. We're sitting in the sukkah. We're drawing down all of that holiness into ourselves, and it becomes part of us. We have a whole week to internalize it, right? What's the schach? The schach is a physical representation of the 100 voices of the shofar. Samach chaf chaf. 60 tkiyas, 20 truos, 20 shvarim. Samach chaf chaf. Schach. You want to see what shofar looks like in Gashmias? Look at Schach. That's what a shofar looks like in Gashmias. In Ruchnias, what is it? This incredibly powerful voice that lifts you up. Wait until you get to hide under a talus. That's even better. You pull the talus over. Oh, it's very, and I'm not saying this in a cynical way. It's a very spiritual experience. There's no doubt about it. Okay, but it's a makif. Spiritual experiences, by definition, are makif. Right? That's why, in all fairness, none of the Rabbeim are so into spiritual experience. It's not what we're about. What are they about? Doing mitzvahs, doing things in El Mazda that are real, that are a function of who you really are. Right? As opposed to that doesn't mean we don't like inspiration. We like inspiration. Inspiration is very, very nice, but it's not about inspiration. It's about how you invest the inspiration once you have it. How do you invest it in positive activity? Right? How do you bring about a change in yourself by virtue of the fact that you've had it, you're in a state of certain inspiration? Because everybody knows if you don't do anything, so the inspiration will disappear in 20 minutes, an hour, 2 days, or a week. It depends on the inspiration. It'll go. It's gone. And not only will it go, and this is a difficult aspect of inspiration, it will usually, in the throes of the inspiration, once the initial hit ends, there will be a stronger force of the Nefesh HaBahamis to take you down to an even lower place. Which is why you feel the way you feel Motzi Shabbos. That's why you have to have a lot of malka, singing for bread. Motzi Shabbos is a very dangerous time of the week. When do most people act the stupidest? Hanging out on, it used to be Ben Yehuda, now it's the Shuk. Mm-hmm.
So like his Shabbos is considered more similar to the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur level of Makif?
What, Shabbos?
Yeah.
Yeah, on a certain level. It's not quite yet Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur.
No,
but yeah,
it's not so.
That's why it's a descent of Motzi Shabbos. It's a hard descent. It's a fall. We have to cushion the fall. How do we cushion the fall? Malka. Have some hot tea. Baal Shem Tov said you should boil up some new water, not water left over from Shabbos, new water, and have a cup of tea or something. Whatever. Maybe once I saw an explanation, but I don't remember. If I ever saw an explanation, I don't remember. Let me put it that way. Maybe I never saw an explanation. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Why don't we sleep in the sukkah?
That's a separate question. In Lubavitch, why don't we, one sentence answer, why don't we sleep in the sukkah? Because the holiness in the sukkah is so powerful that, and if I'm aware of just how powerful that holiness is, I'll experience a certain tsar, a certain pain by virtue of the fact that I could fall asleep in such a state of holiness. And that will cause tsar. That's how the Rebbe explains it al pi halacha. Because what's the sukkah? Panemius, the makifin de bina. It's makif, but you're in it. You're sitting in it. That's sukkah. When you're going like this, what are you doing? When did you do that? Fairly recently. Something similar. Not now. I'm saying you're doing it on sukkah. When have you done something? Okay, on Yom Kippur, you're going like this about your Averas. On Sukkot, you're taking the joy of the lulav to the same place. You're internalizing all of that. That's what lulav is all about, bringing down everything from above, down below, into your heart. All the different directions. Lulav and Esma. Right? That's Sukkot. Okay, so let's go further. But dugma sukkah kipshuta, like a sukkah shemakefes ala adam. A sukkah surrounds a person. So on a certain level, sukkah is makif. It's bringing makif into panemius, but the level of sukkah is makif. That's what sukkah is about. Oh, when does it mamish come into panemius? When's the true, most powerful bringing of all of that makif of Tishrei into panemius? Dafka shmini atzeres. What does atzeres mean? To gather. To stop it, like to stop something when you stop it and you gather it all together. Ubeshmini de sukkis, it's after the 8th. Nimshachim makifim, they're drawn down all these makifim v'ne etzarim and are stopped, but also in this case gathered. Gamba panemius. That's shmini atzeres. So that's really interesting. The 8th day of Sukkot is dafka the panemius. Because it takes the makif of sukkah into panemius. Right? And why do we have an 8th day? I'll be the medrash. Why do we have an 8th day? Because God said I didn't have an 8th day. But I'll be the medrash. Why do we have an 8th day? What did the Abish say to the Jewish people? Everybody's been here for the last 7 days, and this is going to relate to the Pariyachag. The whole world has been here, right? Because Sukkot was the time that the whole world came to the Beis Hamikdash, and they could all bring the korbanos, etc. Right? And the Abish said, I want 1 day just with you. Everybody's going home. You stay 1 more day. And the korbanos on Shmini Atzeres, so 1, 1, 1, 1. 1 par, 1 aisle. Right? 1 of everything. Not 13, 12, 11, 10. Right? 1 of everything. Why? It's expressing very powerfully the oneness of Am Yisrael and Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's like the father says to his children, stay 1 more day with me before you go home. So that's Shmini Atzeres. The Dugmas Haveda de Mesiras Nefesh. What's Shmini Atzeres like? Similar to the Avodah Mesiras Nefesh that we just learned about in the Maimer, the Chanukah. What did it do? Shepayelis, it causes. V'choderes, and it penetrates. B'kol keiches nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh is taking the highest level of godly connection and bringing it into my conscious reality. So it affects everything that I do. Right? That's what Rabbi just explained to us. We learned at the end of last week. That's what Mesiras Nefesh is. That's what Chanukah is all about. That's why Chanukah on one level is all about 8. Because what's Mesiras Nefesh is the revelation of that completely transcendent level. But the 8 comes down into revealed reality. The 8 is expressed down here in Eilam Hazeh. Right? Even more powerfully on a certain level than in the Beis Hamikdash. In the Beis Hamikdash there were 7 candles. In Chanukah there's 8. The level of 8 is revealed. What Shmini Atzeres? Bringing all of the makif of Sukkot into Panemius. Sukkot is bringing the makif of Rosh Hashanah and Kippur into Panemius. But Sukkot itself is a makif. The Sukkot itself is a makif. It surrounds you. It's called Chag HaSukkos. So on a certain level there's also a makif in Sukkot. What's Shmini Atzeres? Bringing that into Panemius. So what's Chanukah? Bringing the makif of your neshama into Panemius. What's Shmini Atzeres? Bringing the makif of the whole month into Pneumius. The 8th, interestingly enough, well, we'll see. Right, I was going to say it in the next line, so I don't have to say it. Vizel, we saw this in Hanukkah. Also, Vizel Mashishneim, Sukkos for Hanukkah, Shmeina Yamin, are 8 days. But how are they 8 days? Sukkot is 7 and 1, right? And Hanukkah on a certain level is 1 and 7, right? There's one day at the beginning, like there's that extra day. Well, obviously it's put on the end, right? But there's that extra day. There's that extra reality that we celebrate an extra day for, which is Manyan. So both of them are Aleph and Zayin, 1 and 7. And the 1 is the transcendent level above the 7. It's very interesting. That's what it says now. The Mispar Shmeinahu Aleph Zayin. Sha'aleph. What's the Aleph? Shalamayla Mishtalshus. That's the level completely beyond the natural order. Is Nimshach B'Zayin, is drawn down into Ishtalshus. The 8th level is revealed. The Aleph above the 7 is revealed in the 7. But there's 8. The 8th level, which is the, so to speak, the Aleph. It's not the Ches. Yes, it's Ches when you count. But in this context, what is it? It's a level beyond 7 being brought into 7. What's that Aleph? So in other places, the Rebbe doesn't say it here, but Aleph is a Nechi. There's a Dibros. So both Hanukkah and Sukkot are all about taking that which is transcendent and bringing it into everyday conscious reality. That's specifically Shmini Atzeres, the 8th level of Sukkot. Ukemeshin ner Hanukkah peil gam berigli de Tarmudai b'shnei inyonim. And just like, now the Rebbe says an amazing thing. Just like Ner Hanukkah, what did we say? The last thing we said in Zion was we start lighting at sunset. Why? Because the whole idea of Ner Hanukkah is to illuminate the dark. But when's the latest you can light? When the Tichla Regel Mina Shuk, when people aren't walking outside. And what did Chazal say? Adekalya Rigla the Tarmudai, until the legs of the Tarmudai have kalyad. Oh, okay. So the Tarmudai are who? Not in Pshat, in Pneumius. What did the Rebbe teach us on Thursday? Who are the Tarmudai?
Pneumius, we're referring to...
Not in Pshat. In Pshat, you learn the Gemara. We know who the Tarmudai are. They're the people who walk around and pick up the sticks at the end of the day in the market. Beseder. But what's Tarmudai in the Maimer? Talmud and the Maimer Talmud was Oisius Moredes, the people who rebel against the Kadosh Baruch Hu, create darkness in the world. And yet what happens? Those people are first Kalia, destroyed, but ultimately Klois and Nefesh, elevated to a higher level. 2 different things that happen to the Talmudai. Even the regel of the Tumah, the lowest level of the lowest people, are elevated by Neres Hanukkah. Right? How? Ad the Kalia. Again, the Rebbe said 2 pshatim in Kalia. That's important because it's going to explain to us 2 different things that happen with in Sukkot. Right, relative to Umas Eilam, right? That and Dafka through the Pariachag, that there's the destruction, the diminishing of the Talmudai, and there's also the ultimate rectification and transformation of the Talmudai. 2 different, and the word Kalya means both, to destroy and to elevate. Oh, so how do you relate the evil? You have to destroy it, and then you can ultimately elevate reality. What's Yaakov all about? Yaakov is all about elevating the 70 nations of the world. Right? Okay. Interesting enough, who's the most powerful expression of that? Yocheved. Who's Yocheved? She was born Bein HaChomes. Yocheved is the 70th of the 70 children of Yaakov that we learned about in last week's parsha. It's not even mentioned. If you count the people, there's only 69. When it says that Yaakov went down with 70 people, and if you count, it's only 69 listed in the Torah. Who's the 70th? Yocheved. Rashi says in Pasuk Tezvav. When he finishes with Leah, when the Torah finishes with Leah, so then it says she was from Leah. That Yocheved was born. Who's Yocheved? So Mitzvah Echad, the Rebbe says a number of interesting things about Yocheved. First of all, the Rebbe says she's the 70th, which is mashlim. It completes the ability of Yaakov to elevate all 70 nations by virtue of his 70 children. And the Rebbe says, it's just that only the Rebbe would say such a thing. She's the 70th. How old is she? She's a week old. Even a week-old child could elevate the world. Even any Jewish soul can be involved in elevating reality. So Yocheved, even as a baby, could help elevate reality. But who's Yocheved? Yocheved is the mother of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yocheved and Miriam were the women who kept the spirits of the Jewish people alive and uplifted in Gullus. They were the ones who gave birth to all the babies and helped the women go through the pain of childbirth, which is indicative to the pain of Gullus. Right? That's Yocheved and Miriam. And it's Dafka, interesting enough, the Rebbe says, the interesting thing about the difference in women and men. Men's main role in Geula, there's two things that have to happen in order to elevate Umas Elam. There has to be a destruction of them on a certain level, and then a transformation. The destruction is shaykh to the Aveda of men, going out into the world and destroying Klippa, so to speak. And then what? Women are responsible for then taking that reality and elevating it to a higher state. Taking physicality and elevating it to a higher state. The man goes into the tough world. The woman stays at home and elevates the home into a place of Kedusha. So that those two aspects of Aveda are both necessary. One's the more masculine part, one's the more feminine part. The Rebbe, there's a famous sikh of the Rebbe, and for Parshas, well, it was all around Chaf Beis Shvat. It was the two Shabbosim surrounding Chaf Beis Shvat in Tavshin and Beis, the fourth yard site of the Rebbe's wife, the Rebbetzin. So the Rebbe talked about the fact that our Aved in life is to make a dir b'tachtonim. So we had two very famous sikhs about women at that time. Amazing sikhs about the role of women in bringing Geula. And what the Rebbe said about women in the second sikh, what are the women responsible for? The men make a dir b'tachtonim, the women make it a dir na'ah, they make it a beautiful dir. The men make the house, the women make it a beautiful house. Right. The men like just make there's a house, okay, now there's a front door, there's everything's there. Who makes it beautiful? The women make it beautiful. The man might not even notice. Mm-hmm. So that's the destruction of something on one hand. You have to be mevatel it on one hand, but then once it's batel, you can elevate it to a state of kedusha. What's going to happen to the whole world with Mashiach? There's two different levels of Aveda. Relative to the Parei Achag, interestingly enough, on one hand, the Parei Achag were part of the Aveda in the Beis Hamikdash. On the other hand, there were 70 of them, representing the 70 nations of the world. On the other hand, what was going on with them? How were they brought? You know this. It's in the Mimer. How were they brought? How do we bring the Parei Achag? What did you do the first day?
I don't remember the
Oh,
exact-
decreasing.
Right, decreasing, right.
Oh, so it
13,
went
12, 11,
13,
10, 9, 8, 7, right? That's how they were brought. In other
Yeah.
words, relating to increasing the power of the Klippa of the Umas Eilam, of the nations of the world.
Yeah.
On the other hand, where are they? They're in the Beis Hamikdash.
Mm.
Right? They're in the Beis Hamikdash, right? How are you decreasing them? Well, you're decreasing them by virtue of involving them in the Aved of the Beis Hamikdash. So both things are happening. On one hand, there's a decrease. On the other hand, there's an elevation. You can't elevate without decreasing. To put that in Avodah terms, there can't be Ishavcha unless there's Iskafia. Right? Cigarette smoker can't turn himself into a non-cigarette smoker unless he does the Iskafia of stopping himself from smoking, the hard work of forcing himself not to smoke. But then what happens? Then he can do the Avodah of Ishavcha, of transforming himself into a whole different person. But without the Iskafia, that's not going to happen. Right? I can't change if I don't force myself to stop certain habits that are negative. It's going to change. Right? First there has to be Iskafia, which is the hard part. No, if I change myself, then it'll go away. No, the other way around. First have to make it go away with hard work, and then it'll bring about an internal change so that I'll become a person that not only do I not do that, I'm no longer connected to that. That's Isafcha. But first I have to make sure that I'm a person who doesn't do that, or a person who does do that if it's a desire not to do something positive. So I force myself to do that positive thing until ultimately that's the first level, Iskafia. Okay, once I do that successfully, so then I can ultimately be transformed into a type of person from that behavior is natural. But it can't become natural if I just wait around for it to become natural. That's not going to happen. To do the hard work of Iskafia. So that's those two levels of diminishing and elevating. So in the Sikha that I just said over to you from this week's Parshas, the Rebbe talks about women being the second level, the elevating level. Second line, b'shnei inyanim. Shebetchila, what do the Neres Chanukah do? Umechala, umevataloisam. It nullifies them. And afterwards, what happens? It transforms them to kedusha. That's what we saw. Two different understandings of the word kalya. That's what we saw on Thursday. In this way, also regarding the 70 cows, they correspond to the 70 nations of the world. At first, what does the sacrifice of them bring about? They'll be diminished. 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. And afterwards, ultimately, what does it bring about? They'll assist the Jewish people. This is B'Yemei Mashiach. What's going to be? If the Umm knew how the beis hamikdash is good for them, and this is also then, if they had known this, Kesatrios are battalions. Hayu makifin, I said, they would put battalions around the beis hamikdash kedei l'shemer, to guard it. Okay, so too today. Non-Jews of the world understood just how good the Jews, how important the Jews are for their welfare. They would take care of us. Are there goyim who do that? Yes, absolutely. People understand that. Are there seemingly? I don't know whether there's more and more. They're just more and more vocal. Right? Are there more and more vocal people who, for now becoming, the anti-Semitism become accepted again? Okay, so that's pretty heavy. Hard to understand. Very hard to understand. Not exactly where it all fits in the whole thing. Had a conversation with a shaliach in Chutz La'aretz, in a place where anti-Semitism is growing, and they said they have a real dilemma. He said an amazing line. We weren't prepared for this. Meaning no. What do they mean? How to deal with it? Meaning what? Are we supposed to tell our people, the people who are close to us, if they ask us and say, should we get out of here and go to Eretz Yisrael, are we supposed to tell them yes? That's a real question. There's only one place that we know where the Rebbe told the people there was a dangerous place, and the Rebbe wrote and told them explicitly, it's a safe place for Jews until Mashiach comes, and that was South Africa. Of all places, you would think is probably the most dangerous place where Jews live, on a certain level, right? I mean, Johannesburg's crazy. I think it's a little better now, no? Is it less violent than it was, or not?
In the pockets.
Yeah.
But it's the craziest thing, because you'll go down, it's like quite a dangerous road. There's part of the roads that are disgusting. And they've got those, those like big electronic billboards. And every now and again, Chabad will rent it out, and it will say there, it's a picture of the Rebbe, will say there, South Africa will be good for the Jews. And you can see what the road looks like, and then you see that. It's crazy.
I know, the first time I was in South Africa, they taught me, I had a rental car, and it was the first time I'd ever driven on the other side. It was quite an experience. And there was no GPS in those days, and Levi Weinberg gave me directions from the airport to his house. And I had to just figure out how to do that all by myself with those directions. I'm driving down a highway, he said, you're going to see a lake on your right. Get off the highway, go around the lake, middle of the lake, take a right turn. You're going to go up a hill, you're going to Yeovil. Yeah. Then you go down, right? And how I did that without GPS and didn't get myself in some neighborhood that I would be eaten alive, I don't know. But anyway, and driving on the wrong side of the road. But anyway, what was the first thing they told me? I pulled into his driveway. He said, when you go out of the driveway, go up backwards. Because if there's someone shady on the street that you're a little scared, you can drive right back in quickly. As opposed to having to back in, you're going to probably deal with. That's what they told me. And the second thing they told me was, what do you do at nighttime when you hit a red light?
You slowly stop, you crawl, and then you check there's no cars coming, you go.
Right, you do not stop at red lights.
Yeah, everyone has their own time of what right. Time that
he
is.
said it nicely. They told me, don't stop at red lights at night. Now, obviously, I'm smart enough to do what Jaden said. Obviously, I didn't just drive through red lights at night. You stop, you look around, and then you go.
If it's like a crazy bend, then obviously you're more wary, but...
Okay, so interesting, and this is very tragic, right?
Well, you get home quicker.
No, I'm saying that. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the. So here you think of South Africa as a dangerous place, this student of ours who was murdered.
South Africa.
Where was he originally from? Living in Sydney. Yaakov was in South Africa. The firebomb of the car in Melbourne, 3 days ago, which no one heard about because the Western press didn't cover it. Yeah, a car with a car with a menorah on it was firebombed in front of its house in Melbourne, but the press doesn't want to talk about it. But if you look at us, our press, or we do, or just start reading Sky News Australia, and you'll find out what's really going on in Australia because they talk about it. Lazarus from South Africa. He's a shliach in Melbourne now. No, that's Lazaroff.
Wow.
Lazarus. Originally where? South Africa. Moved from South Africa to Melbourne, and then now all of a sudden there's it's a Meshuggah Welt, but it's hard to understand what's going on right now. It really is very hard to understand in terms of the whole picture. Obviously, this is something that has to happen and is part of the process, but where it fits and how, very hard to understand.
What was the advice you gave to the sheikhs?
I said, I really don't know. I have to think about it. And I was thinking about it all Shabbos long. The Rebbe was very, 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 very supportive of everybody who could to get out of Russia. That usually meant going to Israel. You could go anywhere, but get out of Russia. I mean, now there's nowhere to go now. If you're going to go, where are you going to go? You're going to America? America is this close to tipping completely to the side of the lunatic. The one part of the American political scene that was somewhat supportive of us, it was the right wing, and they're now in a battle between the anti-Semites and the non-anti-Semites in the right wing. And if the anti-Semites win, which the vice president might be part of that, seems pretty close to those people, where's America going to go? I don't know. Okay. But we believe in Mashiach and everything's going to be okay. But just real politics. Where's it going to go? Well, it goes to Australia pretty simply. Right? France. Okay, so now what I told them, one of the things I told them to do is talk to Shluchim in France. What are they saying? I'd imagine Shluchim in England are going to start dealing with this problem pretty soon. A lot of people are going to say, should I stay here? And the Shluchim are going to have a real question. Yes or no? In Brooklyn, so Russia is an example where the Rebbe told people, if you can get out, get out. Now, but that was religious oppression. Crown Heights, where it was just dangerous, the Rebbe told everybody to stay. All the Jews left Crown Heights except Lubavitch. Crown Heights was a Jewish neighborhood till the 60s. Then everybody left, and the Rebbe told his Chassidim to stay. So Crown Heights became a Lubavitch neighborhood. It wasn't a Lubavitch neighborhood. Lubavitch was there, the Rebbe was there, the Frierdiker Rebbe was there, the I Rebbe was there, but there were all sorts of Frum Jews in Crown Heights in the 50s. It's a Frum neighborhood. Right? And non-Frum Jews. So the Rebbe told his Chassidim to stay. That was physical danger. Not spiritual danger. Where are they going to go? They go to Borough Park. There wasn't a spiritual danger to stay in Crown Heights. Very difficult to know. It's a hard one. This was someone from Australia. Where's Australia going? Getting pretty dangerous. Do you trust the Australians to know how to deal with this? Not in the least. They haven't got a clue how to deal with this. Right? Because they never had to deal with this. They haven't got a clue. They're completely clueless. Right? This guy who was involved in the shooting, I'm not saying this, I'm just to understand how clueless they are. The son was on the suspected terrorism list. The son of the father and son, the son was on this, he was on their list. The son and the father, after he was already on the list, then flew to Indonesia and took a 2-month course in jihad. Then flew back to Australia. The father was given a gun license and had 6 rifles. How can, but these people off there, why, does that make any sense? No, if you know what you're doing, would you give the father a gun license? Of course not. Well, they don't know what they're doing. Right? They haven't got a clue. The policeman at the place had pistols. Shoot, these guys had rifles. Okay, so do you trust those people to take care of the Jewish community? I don't know, I wouldn't. So then what do you do? It's a hard one. It's a real hard one. It's not easy. Tell people to leave. You tell people, no, we have to be stronger and more light. The French are leaving. Tens of thousands of French Jews have moved there just in the last 5-10 years. Tens of thousands. Netanya, you hear as much French on the street as you hear Hebrew. Right? Because France is just falling apart. They can't celebrate New Year's in France. They canceled New Year's celebrations because they're so afraid of the Arabs. Because they're going to shoot it up. So they just canceled it. Right?
All the French Jews in my shul, as soon as they leave, keep around their pocket.
Really?
Yeah.
Because here, no, other Rabbanan. We get more into it now. Interesting. Oh, you mean is when they
don't, because they're afraid.
Oh, when they leave the shul, you mean?
Yeah.
Ah, I
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
Okay. They're afraid. Look. That isn't our way, but I get it. I'm not going to judge them for that. I mean, it's pretty scary, right? When I went to Turkey to speak, so I asked the shaliach, can I wear my hat? He said, I wear a baseball hat. He doesn't walk around in one of those. This is years ago. This is now. It's sugar. This is when this is when you could fly Turkish Airways there, right? Okay. So I took an old hat and put it in my carry-on, and I wore a baseball cap. But to daven, I had a hat, and then when leaving, I said, you know what? I'm just going to wear my hat, and I'm on my way out, and there was no problems. In the airport, I've always wanted to have flown through Istanbul countless times. It's the best way to get from Eretz Israel to just about anywhere in the old days was Turkish Airways. But in the city, so he wears a cap. Now, he doesn't go out unless he has to. Now it's very heavy there. It's really heavy. He's there. He's in Istanbul. There's two shulchan in Istanbul. There's one on the European side and one on the Asian side. How this all fits, I haven't got a clue. It doesn't make any sense. But okay, somehow it fits. God's big and we're small, and we don't understand how he does things. Okay, so let's see again. I'm sorry, fourth line. Shebetchila pe'elis akrova, shumas yepeichsin va'ilchin. V'acher kach, and afterwards, what do? They're going to help us. Sorry, so we'll skip down to makifin oisei kidei l'shemer. Fifth last line. Right? If they knew what was that, they'd have battalions. And interesting enough, if you go to many shuls in Europe, what's outside the shul? The Italian army is standing outside the shul protecting the Jews. It's manyan. Right? Okay. Now, is that like that in England? Okay. So on one hand, it's bad out there. On the other hand, interesting enough, it's not so bad that the government, at least, you have to appreciate that part of it as how it's different than what it was so long ago. There's a government that actually, even though they might not like us, officially, they protect us. Okay, that's pretty good. That's new. So the Italian government, I don't think she doesn't like us, but the Italian government has armies, there's soldiers outside every shul in Milan that I've seen. I assume it's the same in Rome. Okay. Manyan. So there's two sides to the whole thing. When my kids went to the Rebbe after for Tishrei, right after 9/11, so 9/11 was about a week before Rosh Hashanah, so there were no flights. Everybody's flight was canceled, and then the flights leaving here, Rosh Hashanah was Sunday night. The flights leaving here started again, Meitzi Shabbos. So I went to the airport with a couple of my bachrim, my sons, and there were, 500-600 Lubavitcher bachrim at the airport, all trying to get tickets to get to the Rebbe before Rosh Hashanah. So, and the airlines, people had tickets on certain airlines, but they couldn't honor them all because they couldn't fit everybody on who hadn't flown for the last 5-6 days. So in those days, there was a very small little room that was where all the airlines were. There was a window for each airline. So there was one bacher got to the front of the line. There was a real line. It wasn't just Lubavitchers, obviously, but there were 400 or 500, maybe 500 Lubavitcher Bachrim there. One of the Bachrim got to the front of the line, and he put out his hand, and about 20 guys, 15, 20 guys put tickets in his hand, and he put them down, said, we need seats. The woman saw it, saw how he wasn't interested in himself. He didn't just take care of himself, he took care of 15, 20 friends. She said, I'm going to get you 20 seats. She took the thing and she went up and down the row. They were all sitting in the same room. There was a different window for each airline, right? But they were all in the same room. So she's going up and down the line. Who has seats? Who has seats? Who has seats? Right? I've got 5 here. Give those guys seats, right? Then they all came back to her. She gave them, here, pass them out. Right? So my kids got on LUT, Polish Airlines, to fly through Warsaw after 9/11. It's a great airline. It's fine. But it's also Star Alliance. Right? So they flew through Poland. Now, of course, the airport was full of army. Everything was full of army right after 9/11. It was crazy. It was Meshuggah. So the airport's full of the Polish army. So there was a minion of them on the plane. When you leave here at 5 a.m. and you get there at 8, and you daven Shachris, then you get on the plane and go to New York. So they daven Shachris in the airport in Warsaw, under guard from the Polish army. Polish army guarding Jews davening.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? And they also even, it happens to be they were in a yeshiva where at the end of davening they sing a certain song and dance around. So there they are dancing in the Polish airline, Yechia, they named it, under guard from the Polish army. So who knows? Who knows what what? I don't know. So we're living in strange times, but we're going to come out of it with Mashiach, just sooner than later, please God. By virtue of the fact that we also bring about in them not only, so first we're mevatel them, they diminish. On the other hand, we elevate them because they're part of the scene, they're part of the beis hamikdash. So there's also an ishafcha, misvasef ad al yodam, and therefore it's increased by virtue of them, siyua, help, gam b'kedusha, also in kedusha, shmiras hamikdash. So the day will come when the non-Jews will set up shop protecting the beis hamikdash. Valderach zeh sheyeh lasid laver, as it will be lasid laver. Kasher az efech el ha'amim la'avdei shchem echad. Then what? The whole world will recognize the greatness of God and will all serve God together. Hine az, what's one of the psukim that describes reality in Yeshayahu, describes reality in the days of Mashiach. V'im duzarim, am they'll stand the strangers. V'ru tzenchem, they'll guard your flocks. They'll shepherd your sheep so you can sit and learn Torah. They'll take your sheep out and feed them and take care of them, and you can sit and learn Torah. This is similar to the sacrifice of the 70 cows correspond to the 70 umas. By virtue of umitzad, and as a result of umas nizvasef b'shmini, they add on the 8th day korban l'bnei Yisrael b'beis hamikdash. They add a korban to us. Wow, what did the Rebbe just say? Why is there an 8th day? We said earlier, since everybody's there the 7th day, the 7 days, so that adds an extra day. The Eibishter said, I want one more day just with you. If they weren't there, there wouldn't have been an 8th day. Dafka because they're there. The Eibishter says, I want an 8th day. Their presence there brings about a revelation of the 8th level. That's the whole Indian of the Makiv coming into Panemius. That the 8th is revealed in the world. V'hine, ha'inyan demisha tishka chama. This idea of when the sun sets, that's when we light. B'yichud al cheshech hagolus, the fact that it's specifically relevant to the darkness of Golus, ubefrat, and particularly cheshech kofel and mechupel, the doubled and quadrupled darkness, the Mashiach in the days right before Mashiach, our days. V'zuyay, and this is the instruction to Neres Chanukah. L'kol echad ve'echad b'zman Golus. This is the lesson of Chanukah to every single person in Golus. Shakavana the cheshech hagolus, the intention of cheshech hagolus. The Rebbe said, why does the Rebbe get out of Golus? Why does the Rebbe seem to like Golus so much? Ubechdei la'era aveda Mesiras Nefesh. What's the Eibishter get from his Yidden in Golos Mesiras Nefesh? And that won't happen. B'Yemei Mashiach. Why not? No need. Right? Now that doesn't mean we're not going to be more powerfully connected to the Eibishter on certain levels. Absolutely. But Mesiras Nefesh, the Mesiras Nefesh that has been exhibited through Golos, that not. Enough already, Eibishter, we say to the Eibishter. You've had enough Mesiras Nefesh, now bring Geula. But that's the advantage of Golos, is the Mesiras Nefesh of Golos. And by virtue of this, the greatest dark is rectified. The nefach learn is transformed to light. It's dafka through our Mesiras Nefesh that we elevate even the lowest places imaginable. By virtue of the joining together of the service of all the Jews together, al kol panim rubam, at least most of them, the rubai kekula, as we know, the majority is like all. Mitzvah achas, even one mitzvah, one mitzvah of one Jew. Hein b'maisa, whether that's in action, hein b'dibur, or it's in speech, hein b'machshav, or it's in thought. Now the Rebbe quotes the Rambam. What does the Rambam say? That every single person has to see themselves as if the whole world is hanging in balance, and the next action that you do could tip the scales of the whole world to a side of good. And the other Rebbe quotes the Rambam. By virtue of that good deed that you can do right now, now the next words are all direct quotes from the Rambam. He tips the scales for himself. And the whole world to the side of merit. And he causes for himself and to them, the whole world, salvation. Ram says every single person should see the world hanging in a balance. The next thing I do can completely and totally change reality. All the more so. All the more so through the increase in the performance of the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah, which you can't do right now, but you can do in 12 months. Actually, there's a machlekes whether Chanukah will be bottled or not and be Meiz Mashiach. We'll see. Hopefully, we'll. I just saw an interesting thing actually that Aaron HaKohen. We saw the medrash, right? That the Kadosh Baruch Hu says to Aaron HaKohen after all of the Shvatim bring their karbonos to commemorate to inaugurate the Mizbeach. So Avram's upset. Aaron is upset. So the Eibishter tells Moshe to tell Shelcha Gedalim Mishalam. Yours is greater than them. That's the menorah, and that won't be bottled ever, right? Oh, so I don't know who it was. It wasn't Lubavitch. It was some Chassidish Rav. I saw, there's a compilation of different Chassidish things on the Parsha. So who was it? I don't know. It doesn't matter who it was. Someone said that, a famous old Chassidish Rebbe from Europe said that Aaron HaKohen is going to paskin that Hanukkah should also be celebrated by Meiz Mashiach because it's his Hanukkah. And so Moshe will say, since Aaron is my brother and he paskins that it should be, so then we'll let it be. But Aaron will paskin right away, and Moshe will say, okay, you're right. So there'll be Hanukkah. This mitzvah is connected, relevant specifically to Yeshua Vatzolo, to salvation. The Gula that will be through Mashiach. What's Mashiach? Mashiach's also 8. Now, I was going to mention this Gemara in Sukkah, which some of you might have learned with Rabbi Silberg if you went through Sukkah. Mashiach, v'chein Eliyahu, mevaser Geula. Mashiach and Eliyahu is the one who heralds the Geula. They're of the 8 princes. The Gemara in Sukkah, by the end of Sukkah, it's Nun Beis, Amud Beis, talks about 7 shepherds: David, Moshe, Mesushelach, Avram, Yaakov, Moshe on one side, David in the middle, Shes, Mesushelach, maybe Adam, Shes, Mesushelach on the other side. Those are the 7 shepherds. And then 8 Nesichei Adam, the 8 princes, and the last 2 of the 8 princes are Eliyahu and Mashiach. Actually, not the 8. I think they're 6 and 7. And right, so the princes of it. So what's Shayach? Dafka 8. Mashiach is part of the group of 8 because they're the transcendent group. Inyan Shmeina Neres Chanukah, which is Shayach to the 8 candles of Chanukah. The 8 Inyan B'Shaychus Mirchedes. And one other aspect of the special relevance, the Neres Chanukah Lugula Asida to the future redemption. To Kamesh and Neres Chanukah, just like Neres Chanukah, Ein B'Telim Li'elom, are not done away with, right? We've been lighting Chanukah licht throughout all of the Gullus. Kain gam geula sida, so too the future redemption. Tia gula nitzchis, it will be an eternal redemption, not like the redemptions we've experienced up until now. The redemption from Egypt lasted, but it ultimately ended. The redemption that we came back and rebuilt the second base of Mikdash also lasted for 420 years, but then we ended up in Gullus again. This will be one, the final redemption, she'ein shayach, it's not relevant, shiach harei Gullus, that there'll be Gullus afterwards. Meaning once Mashiach comes, that's it. It's over. Gullus is finished. It'll be Geula forever. V'chein beis hamikdash hashlishi, so to the beis hamikdash hashlishi, beis nitzchi. That's the eternal beis hamikdash, and that's the beis hamikdash that Yechezkel prophesied. Yechezkel, in the time of Beis Rishon, had a prophecy about Beis Shlishi, and that's the eternal beis hamikdash she'ein batel elam, that will never be destroyed. But bias Mashiach tzidkenu, that'll all happen with the coming of Mashiach. Yaver v'yigalenu should come and redeem us v'yelchenu kemis leitzenu, and he will guide us upright to our land. Ubekat of mamash, it should happen very, very soon.
Right.
Okay. Look, we did it. We finished by 8:30. Okay.
At 8.
Tomorrow we'll start Basi Lagani.
Which one are we doing?
Tafshin Yud.
It's
Different
different
than
than the one we did in the summer, yeah?
We do it in the summer?
No, it's a different. Which one is that? That's the previous.
The previous Rebbe is Basi Lagani.
No, I think we did the previous one.
But with me in the summer?
Yeah, which one is it?
Yeah?
How was it supposed to be done?
I don't remember doing Basi Lagani in the summer. I might have. Don't usually do it in the summer, but I might have. I'm not sure.